There is a particular moment in the dynamic with an avoidant that most people experience as the ending of something, the rejection, in whatever form it took, whether the explicit withdrawal of an offer that seemed to be building towards something, the sudden cooling after a period of genuine warmth, the indirect but unmistakable communication that the avoidant was stepping back from the closeness that had been forming between you. Most people receive this moment as information, as the verdict, as the point at which the hope is supposed to recalibrate towards something more honest about the situation's actual trajectory. And most people respond to it in one of the ways that the pain of rejection naturally produces, with visible hurt that communicates the impact, with pursuit that attempts to reverse the verdict, with the specific, understandable, entirely human response of someone who was reaching towards something real and has just been told, in the avoidance characteristically indirect but unmistakable way, that the reaching is not being met. These responses are understandable. They are also, in the specific context of the avoidance psychology and what the rejection is actually testing, the responses that confirm the avoidance most self-protective narrative and make the retreat feel both justified and safe. Your response was different, and the difference changed everything. The rejection in the avoidance interior is not what it presents as externally. It does not feel from the inside of the avoidance psychology like the straightforward communication of disinterest. It feels, if the avoidant is being genuinely honest with themselves about what is driving it, more like a test that they are administering without fully acknowledging that they are administering it. Not a deliberate test, not a calculated strategy designed to assess your suitability, but the involuntary, fear-driven, attachment system-level probe that the avoidance psychology performs when something has gotten close enough to matter. The probe asks a specific question. It asks what you are made of, not in the grand, character-defining sense, but in the specific relational sense of what you do when the thing you were reaching for withdraws. Do you collapse into the withdrawal's gravity? Do you pursue in the way that confirms the avoidance power position? Do you become smaller, more accommodating, more willing to settle for less in response to the signal that less is what is on offer? Do you allow the rejection to become the primary fact of your interior, the thing around which your sense of self and your sense of the situation reorganize? Or do you stay whole? Staying whole after a rejection from someone you were genuinely invested in is not a simple thing. It is not the performance of indifference or the adoption of a strategic posture designed to communicate that you are unaffected. It is the genuine, internally grounded, costs something to maintain reality of someone who has been hurt and has allowed the hurt to be what it is without allowing it to become the reorganizing principle of their self-concept. Someone who can feel the disappointment fully and remain, through the feeling of it, recognizably themselves. Someone whose worth is not at the operational level where the nervous system carries these things, contingent on the avoidance decision to offer or withdraw. This is extraordinarily rare in the avoidance experience, because the avoidance rejections, in their relational history, have almost always produced the orbit, the continued circling of the rejected person around the avoidance withdrawal, making themselves more available, adjusting their presentation, demonstrating through the quality of their pursuit that the rejection has confirmed the avoidance centrality rather than challenged it. The orbit is the predictable consequence of rejection meeting a person whose self-worth was, at some functional level, organized around the approval of the person doing the rejecting. Your response did not orbit. Your response was, and this is the thing the avoidant could not have predicted and could not, once it was demonstrated, prevent from mattering, the continuation of you, not defiantly, not with the performed casualness of someone whose composure is a message directed at the avoidant, but genuinely, the same quality of presence you brought before the rejection brought after it, the same grounded, self-possessed, entirely occupied by your own life quality that had made you interesting to begin with, persisting through the rejection as though the rejection had not reached the level of your foundations, because it had not. This is the thing that landed in the avoidant with a force that the rejection itself could not have anticipated producing. The realization, arriving through the evidence of your response, rather than through any declaration that the rejection had not made you smaller. The avoidance ego, as examined in previous pieces, is maintained in part by the confirmation that their withdrawal has the effect of reducing the other person's self-possession, that their stepping back generates the leaning forward that confirms their centrality. The rejection is, in part, a test of this, an unconscious assessment of whether you are someone whose sense of yourself is stable enough to survive the withdrawal of their attention. Your response demonstrated that you were, and the demonstration did not arrive as a challenge to the avoidance ego. It was not deployed in a way that felt confrontational or competitive. It simply existed. The quiet, undeniable evidence of someone whose foundations had not shifted in response to the avoidance stepping back, whose interior had absorbed the rejection without the absorption requiring a reorganization of the self around the fact of the rejection. The avoidant had never encountered this, or not like this, not in combination with the genuine connection and the genuine caring that had preceded the rejection, not in someone who had been visibly invested, visibly reaching towards something real, and who had demonstrated, in the most concrete possible way, through the quality of the response to having that reaching withdrawn, that the investment was not dependency. The falling that followed was not immediate. The avoidance system does not produce immediate reversals of its own decisions, even decisions that are generating evidence against themselves. The falling accumulated in the specific, gradual, increasingly undeniable way that all the avoidance most significant interior shifts accumulate below the level of conscious acknowledgement across the days and interactions that followed the rejection. It accumulated in the quality of attention the avoidant brought to you in the aftermath. The noticing that increased rather than decreased, the curiosity that was activated by the mystery of someone who was not behaving as expected, the specific, destabilizing question that your response had installed in the avoidance interior and that the interior kept returning to, what is this person made of that the rejection did not change them? It accumulated in the comparison, the avoidant encountering, in the aftermath of the rejection, the specific absence of what your particular quality of presence had provided, and discovering that the absence was less comfortable than the management of the closeness your presence generated, that the uncomplicated interactions available without you were missing something specific that uncomplicated interactions do not provide, that the ease of connection with people who did not challenge the avoidance equilibrium was not, in the end, as satisfying as the more demanding, more destabilizing, more genuinely alive quality of connection with someone who had just demonstrated that they were impossible to fully dismiss. It accumulated in the regret that arrived quietly, not the dramatic regret of a completed loss, but the specific, present tense, still reversible regret of someone who is watching something genuinely valuable continuing to exist without them and understanding, with increasing clarity, that the stepping back was the fear rather than the truth of what they wanted. The irony at the center of this dynamic is real and it is important. The response to the rejection that made the avoidant fall most deeply in love with you was not a response designed to produce that outcome. It could not have been. Because the response that produces the outcome, the genuine, grounded, self-possessed continuation of yourself through the rejection, is only available to someone for whom the outcome is genuinely not the point, whose wholeness is genuinely not contingent on the avoidance response, who is genuinely, fully occupied by their own life in a way that persists through the rejection, not because they are performing the persistence, but because the life is real and the wholeness is real, and the rejection, however painful, did not have access to the foundations. The strategy version of this response, the deliberately calibrated performance of unaffectedness designed to produce exactly this effect, collapses at the first honest examination because it is organized around the avoidance response. It is doing the thing in order to produce the thing. And the doing in order to produce is, at the level where the avoidance perception operates, entirely visible. The performing of wholeness and the genuine possession of it feel different. They smell different in the specific, untranslatable, entirely accurate way that the genuine always smells different from the performed. What you did was not a performance. It was the honest expression of someone who had arrived at a genuine relationship with their own worth, not through the avoidance confirmation of it, but through whatever combination of self-knowledge and previous work and honest reckoning had produced in you the specific, rare, deeply grounded understanding that your value does not require external validation to be real. The rejection made the avoidant fall deeply in love with you, not because you handled it correctly, because you handled it honestly, because the person who was present after the rejection was the same person who was present before it, no smaller, no more accommodating, no less genuinely yourself. And that continuity, that specific, unperformed, foundationally grounded continuity, was the thing the avoidant had been, without knowing they were looking for their entire relational life, not someone who would stay despite the rejection, someone who would remain themselves through it. That person, whole in the face of withdrawal, grounded in the face of loss, entirely, quietly, undeniably themselves, is the person the avoidant could not let go of, is the person who, in the silent accounting of their interior, they may not be able to let go of still.